Let's do it again. Dave, go ahead and give us another
Do it
intro.
again. All right. Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Dave Ruiter. I'm from the Netherlands. It's pretty late out here, but I'm really excited to be here to talk about Power BI.
Matt, want to give us a run through?
Yeah, hi everyone. Matt Allington from Sydney, Australia. It's early here. Sorry for the guys in Europe. So Darren and I, it's 7 a.m. Well, 7:19 now. But yeah, hi. Looking forward to having a chat and see how we go with this thing.
Excellent. Reed, give us a hello.
Hey guys, Reed here from Seattle, Washington. I'm excited to be here as well and just talk some shop about some of the latest and greatest features that we're having. It's thankfully a nice, relaxing midday for me, so I'm enjoying the sunshine.
2 p.m., not bad.
Yeah.
Mark?
Yeah. Hi everyone. My name is Mark from the Netherlands, colleague of Dave, and also pretty late here, so
It's almost midnight,
I'm looking
right?
forward to almost midnight, but
Party hard.
going strong. Yeah.
Now, Mark, you're a more recent MVP, right? Is this your first year or second year?
Second year.
Second year. So you're one of the young guns here. Appreciate you joining us. I really appreciate it. Reed's
Number
3.
3 for me. Yep.
Yeah.
And-
Dave
and
is,
what-
I think, the most fresh MVP of us.
Oh, Dave, you're even 1?
Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah. I became an MVP in December.
Oh, excellent. And then we have our residential, always been an MVP, Darren.
Yeah, I'm waiting for my 15th disc to arrive. Should arrive this week, I think.
Amazing.
Yeah, I got mine yesterday.
And you even no,
Yeah.
you get 5-year chips, right, to put on your little
You do.
thing when you get to the 5. Okay.
5 and
I've got
10
room in the
and
top for
15,
one more.
right? Every 5 they give you one, right?
Yep.
Excellent.
Nice.
So every 5 you get one of those blue chips.
Hey,
Love
Mike, on the stream, we don't see you anymore. I don't know if you want to change anything right now, but
Yeah. Let me see if I can just quickly add myself here real quick. I do.
don't ruin it.
I know, right?
I'm tensing up right now. as soon
Cross
as you're
your
about to click the
fingers.
button.
I'll see if I can sneak myself down here in the corner. All right, I think I'm there. So I don't have the fancy banner for Power BI, but hey, my name is Mike Carlo. I'm one of the owners of Power BI.tips. Just like hanging out with MVPs, doing a bunch of data things. I'm a nut just like these guys are. We work full-time jobs all day and then play around with Power BI all night. So we're here just kind of reacting. The whole purpose of this webinar is just to kind of hang out, chat as MVPs, and we're just going to kind of react to what we have seen in the July 2020 update. So there's a bunch of features are out. I don't know if anyone who is watching, if you don't know, every month or about every month, Power BI releases another desktop, a desktop application, and with that come with a bunch of new features. And particularly, and I'll kick off one of the topics here right off the bat, one of the ones I'm most excited about, I've been playing around with, has been the external tools, brought to you by Darren himself. So Darren has been a huge contributor to the DAX Studio program.
Daniel
Well,
brought it, not Darren. Well,
oh, sorry.
Darren's a contributor.
I'm getting them all confused. There's 2 of them. Darren, you
Yeah.
did DAX Studio, and
Indeed.
Tabular Editor
Yep.
is also in there as well, and that's Daniel Oetker out of, I'm not sure, is he in the Netherlands too, or somewhere?
Yeah, he's in
Nope.
Denmark.
Denmark.
Okay.
Keep me honest, guys. Keep me honest.
We are. We need to.
It's almost the same. It's only 1,000 kilometers away from us.
I don't even know what a kilometer is. I'm from the States. What do you, oh, so that's kind of some of the features. So any guys, any of your first reactions to the desktop for this July? And I can rattle through some features too if we need those as well.
I mean,
think
one that
that's the
I've-
one.
Yeah,
Go-
well,
go, Ray.
I would say I think that's probably the one that's going to take up most of the time for this call. Is just all the useful features of external tools and the advanced things that we can do with it. But I think it would be fun to maybe hit off a couple of the smaller ones. That I know that one of the ones that I really like is that gradient, the gradient legend that's now available. That I literally had to Photoshop that stuff previously and having to make that in PowerPoint or things like that. And it's a really nice little feature to also show that min and max number dynamically up in the upper left corner. So I'm really happy about that as an integration to about 8 or 10 of the native visuals now in Power BI, maybe even a few more.
I think the relationship view is a big one for me. In the I do a lot of work with live connected models, and
Yeah.
I have to. One of the few times I'd crack open Visual Studio was so I could see the lines between the different tables, especially if I was
true.
working with a a model someone else had built, and they go, "Wow, how am I going to fix their calculation?" I'd have to look at the relationships, and being able to do that straight from Power BI is just going to be magic.
So I have.
I had an idea about that. There was an
totally
idea on
agree.
Power BI ideas, but sorry, Mark. There was an idea on Power BI's to try and fix that, because I mean it's crazy, right? You cannot accurately and competently write a DAX formula if you cannot see the relationship view. I mean, you could guess, and you might get it right, but it was just such an obvious omission. Maybe not obvious at the time. I mean, I'm not trying to be critical of the thought processes, but once you put it live, it's just a big gap. And what we used to do was take a screenshot of the model and put it as an image on a page, right, so that people could actually write measures. But the ability to write local measures without being able to see the model view is just just a huge gap. Sorry, Mark, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No worries. I think it was a very useful addition. What I also really like about this new model view is that it's much more smoother to rearrange the tables now. It was a bit crappy maybe even in the beginning, and if you now move a table over, it much more smoother and fluently to rearrange the tables and make it look like a decent star schema.
Yeah, there's actually something else that I didn't realize until we've just had this conversation. In the Power Pivot for Excel, when you drag a column from one table to another, it gives you a visual indication of which column you're about to drop it on. And it's only just occurred to me, because I know that's now in the model view, but it must have been done at the same time, right? So they obviously downloaded the code, someone worked on it, and they fixed those things. And I think this is a real lesson for everyone out there in ideas.powerbi.com land, because I know the developers do look at those lists. And even if you only get 5 votes, the developer, if they're going to work on the model view, they'll go into ideas.powerbi.com and they search for model view, and they look at all the ideas. And so if they're going to download the code, check it out, do some work, test it, check it back in. They're going to have a look for everything that's quick and easy to do, which is completely different to no one's touching the code. There's 2 hours effort of check out, check in, fix, test to do 1 minute worth of coding. It's a completely different scenario, right? So anytime a developer is going to touch a portion of the code, I mean, you know this better than most people, Darren, but anytime someone's going to touch a portion of the code, that's the time to pick up the small, high value adding, but small coding bits. I don't know if you've got any comments on that, Darren, on the processes of the developer.
And sometimes you pick up things from other people that you don't do. Like Chris Webb helped me find a bug in DAX Studio because he often closes all of the tabs. And there was a bug a couple of releases ago. If he closed all of the tabs and you'd also closed the desktop file, it still tried to connect back, but it just wasn't the workflow I normally did. So you probably get the same issue with ideas.powerbi.com, that a couple of the guys in Redmond might not come up with the same ideas as someone with a different experience and different patterns of work. Yeah. And sometimes you go, hey, that's real easy. We could make that work for those people. So feedback from a variety of users is really valuable.
And I'll throw, for those of you who are online and don't know about the ideas.powerbi tips, I'm going to throw the link in there just in case. There has been a change. So ideas.powerbi.com has now changed from, I think I said .tips. That was Freudian slip, sorry. So I think I said the ideas.powerbi.com is a place where you can just go and submit your ideas. There has been a change now that you can no longer use a generic email address. You now need to be authenticated through an AD or an Active Directory account. So just be aware that's a change that's come there, but you can sign in, you can submit your ideas, and I would highly recommend cruise the top or the hot or the new. There's like a couple of topic ideas. They have top ideas, the hot ideas, and new ideas, and I kind of every couple days go through and look through what's hot ideas and what are new ideas, and trying to vote for ones that I think are most valuable to the product team to kind of produce some visibility there as well. So I'll just drop that link in here as well into the chat, just in case.
Yeah. So before we sort of move off, I know we sort of touched on external tools. Mikey mentioned it up front, and I think Reid, you're right, it's the big one, and it's for me. I just want to come back and talk about that because for me, the big thing, let alone the integration of Darren's work with DAX Studio and Daniel's work with external tools. Let's not forget Christian either, Christian Wade, who developed ALM Toolkit. But for me, the big thing is the visibility. Now, I think most of us sort of do blogging and we share stuff, but it's amazing how many people don't know that some of these things exist, right? And they're not in day-to-day like we are. So we get visibility of these things perhaps because we're in it much deeper. I mean, there was a day when I didn't know about DAX Studio. Of course, we all go through that discovery. But for me, this is almost the antithesis of Power Query. I've long been a critic that Power Query is one of the best pieces of standalone software that Microsoft has ever put out. And it gets hidden in a menu called Transform Data inside Excel and inside Power BI Desktop. Yeah. And just the lack of discovery means that most people don't know about that fantastic product called Power Query. But now, external tools, it's almost ironic that Microsoft is now promoting the availability of DAX Studio and ALM Toolkit and Tabular Editor more strongly than it promotes its own fantastic piece of software called Power Query that people don't even associate with a standalone product. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, at least from the perspective, like Matt, as you said, where it's kind of a little bit buried under, I feel a lot of people never even click the button. They get data in Connect, they never even really think to edit or even go and explore what that is. So I mean, I wouldn't say it's any more or less visible on the ribbon than the other options, other than maybe like, potentially getting its own dedicated ribbon.
But it doesn't have a brand. It doesn't have a brand, right?
Yeah, and I agree. Like it's gone back and forth from get and transform to transform data and and all these other things. But it's not nearly as kind of big and bold up on the ribbon as something like you really should click this and figure out what it does. That I think the credit that it deserves. So I think it's partially the fact that there isn't really even like a standalone way to like open it up and just use Power Query without having to like use it as part of another tool. So it always seems to it gets second tier or second share to whatever tool that it's supported.
Yeah. So Darren, have you got? Sorry, Dave. Go for it.
For me, I've given the feedback sometimes that for me it feels like it's a under the hood thing. And like with the car, you don't do anything there besides some easy things if you don't know what you're doing. And I would really like for them to make it a more like a first citizen thing, like a really integrated thing, and maybe put it on the left where you have the model view, the report view, the data view, and then also the query view, like 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe the external tools button or link as a fifth or something like. Put it in line with all the other perspectives of your solution.
I like that a lot, actually. That's a great.
And then
there's a lot of ways of space there on the right-hand side or left-hand side.
Left-hand side, yeah. There's a big white space there, and it can still open up the external editor. I like the fact that it's a next second window. That I think that should stay, but yeah.
So Darren, any early insights from you on people downloading DAX Studio since the external tools were put in the ribbon?
No, nothing specific. I don't have a lot of. I'm not seeing a huge increase yet. I think it's probably, probably the Twitter followers and the leading edge, the people that go to conferences and watch YouTubes and sort of the audience that'll be listening at the moment that already know about DAX Studio that are embracing the external tools.
We should have forgotten that a lot of people aren't able to install the latest version themselves. I run into this every day. People have a version of March, April, May, and they're waiting for the July version, and will only come in weeks or months.
Yep, indeed. Yep. I also heard some people struggling with getting the external tools enabled. They saw the icons in the top ribbon, but they were grayed out for some reason.
I'll tell you what I've seen, Mark, with the grayed out one, because I'm actually writing a blog about this. I hope to get that out later this week. But My first observation was they were grayed out, but then what I realized as I was starting to write my blog is you actually have to have a model open. So if you open a blank workbook and you've got the tools installed, they're there and it's grayed out, and my first impression was, oh, it's not working. But as soon as I opened a model, the grayed out icons became active.
So in other words, you need to first import some tables before you can start.
You have to have at least one table before you can.
The same with like making a DAX measure too. Like you need at least one. You need data for some buttons to activate.
Yeah.
Matt, that's not entirely true. I would like, before you put your blog post on there, I have literally a blank Power BI desktop file open, nothing in there, and they're enabled, and I can click on them, and they open both Doc Studio and Tabular Editor.
That's
maybe there's a dependency on the new metadata. Adam also mentions in the chat right now that you need to enable the preview feature.
Yeah, but I'm sure I had the preview feature on. I've had it on for months. So, all right. Well,
he does also say you have to have a model too.
I would say I did observe one kind of, maybe it wasn't a bug, more of a, I think I had an older version of DAX Studio installed. So as soon as I got the new desktop, I reinstalled the Power BI desktop program. I saw Tabular Editor show up immediately, and I did not see DAX Studio. So I had to go back out. I actually just not install. I think it was installed the latest version that came out. So if anyone who's struggling with that or is going to external tools and not observing or seeing Tabular Editor or DAX Studio or ALM Toolkit, make sure you go install the latest version of the software, because those are changes that the developers had to make on their side to make sure the tools are exposed inside desktop.
Yeah, I saw the same experience.
There's a little JSON file we have to write out that tells Power BI Desktop where to find the tool.
Dave, looks like Adam actually just confirmed. He's like, he just opened a blank PBIAX file and external tools are enabled. So it does show up for, Like I said, I think we just need to get Adam on the next month's call. Like, he's chiming in so much already from the comments. He should just be on the call with us at some point.
We're only letting Adam on the call if we can stream to his YouTube channel with 120,000 users.
30,000 now, 130.
130. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's buttering.
But still, if we came back to this topic, it's interesting to see what make this icons being grayed out. What is causing this?
Yeah, maybe there's some bug or. I mean, I got screenshots because I was writing my blog, right? And so it definitely happened. And obviously you've seen that as well. So I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah.
Maybe it was something to do with installing the latest version, right? So so I know for a fact that in my case it was I only could see Tabular Editor. So my first response was, okay, install the latest versions. I just went away immediately and installed the latest 2 versions, and then I saw the enabled icon. So maybe there's something in there. I don't know. What else?
What do we think about the Azure Maps visual, by the way?
Ooh.
I'm happy with that
3D
one.
bar charts.
I'm not happy about that one.
What is it?
Why not?
How's
Why
it
not? Tell
different
me.
to the Bing Maps. What's the difference?
Oh,
There's one major difference, I believe, and that is maybe they start competing with ArcGIS in this case, because you can apply your own polygons to the map and stuff like that.
Right. Is it a licensed product? You need Azure credits or something to be able to do that, or?
I'm not sure. I don't believe so, honestly, but I'm not 100% sure about that.
It reminds me a lot of the map thing that you used to have in Excel, where you could make some of the, not quite the full 3D maps, but it certainly has some of those 3D elements you can now add to it. That's the one downside that I would say. Is like, I like that there's so many different map options. It's certainly the most feature-rich of the native ones, but I don't know if I need like actual 3D bars popping out of my regions.
That's kind of where I get a little bit, like, it feels a little bit overdone when there's like 3D bars all over the map. And I honestly, that was the first mapping tool that I used in Excel, and I thought, holy smokes, this is amazing. You had the globy thing, and you could like spin a globe around, and there was bars all over the globe as you spun. I'm like, this is amazing. But in reality,
you can create
like,
flight paths too.
Not really sure how I would use it. I mean, other than, sales in this area are higher than others, and this bar's really tall. So like, I'm not sure if it, for me, I'm not finding a good 100% use case. There's probably people who want to use it and it's very flashy, but I'm not finding a good like business use case. This is answering a business question that I really need.
Yeah. I also see a lot of comments in the chat about 3D, 3-dimensional is a no-go. I can totally agree with that. But but
Adam, no,
also,
we're not 3D visualing all the things. It's not about the cell. Has a good comment though. So yeah, Azure Maps does require licensing. It looks like, but it has a lot of free features. Okay, and it's one of the reasons it's in preview is it's like the licensing isn't been factored in yet since it's still previewed.
What do you guys think for performance on the Azure Maps visual? Have you guys played around with that a little bit, and like, have you thrown a ton of points on it yet at this point?
I believe
Oh,
there's
like-
also
like
a
seeing
limit
how-
for data points.
Good.
There's also a limit for data points, right? Like 30,000 or something.
It sounds like you've tested this, Mike.
Well, I've heard some rumblings of some people getting some poor performance on it just because it's been, when you throw a lot of data points at it, it takes a bit longer to render. So I don't know. I just was curious if you've seen, I have not personally experienced it. I don't know, maybe I haven't thrown enough data points at it at this point, but I would be curious if you guys have seen any kind of performance issues from your side if you've been playing with it.
Sounds like a good blog post.
I'm all about the performance testing of stuff. I keep throwing
benchmarking.
random data sets on
Yeah.
it.
Throw 30,000 geo points onto there and test like the native map visual versus this one and just see which, or like AnarchGIS. That actually would be a good meta-analysis.
A side note to that, 30,000 is the limit for a single visual. And is it 30,000? So say, for example, you have a table. So this is totally a sidebar of 30,000 data points. So say you have a table with 3 columns. If you download that table, does that mean you get a table with 3 columns of 10,000 data points each for 30,000 data point limit to download to Excel or download to out of the program? Because someone had asked a question. I think it was
Side note to that, why should you even download it from Power BI?
well, I
would
agree
think
with you there. I totally
Yeah.
agree with you. It's not a
I would
downloading
think
tool,
it's tuples.
but
I think it's
know-
30,000
I would imagine
rows.
Yeah, I
the
think it's a
actual
row limit.
individual-
It's a row limit.
But it's
You think it's a row limit?
it is a row limit, but it unpivots the data when it downloads it, right? Which is like
Yes.
pre-pivot table version. So
Gotcha.
I think it's 10,000 rows,
I think it is too, because David
or
Eldersveld.
10,000 times 3,
Oh, I
which
think
is 30,000.
yeah, I think David Eldersveld asked the question. People were saying I had a big table that has 100,000 rows to it, and they're only able to get like 1,000 rows out of the table. And I was thinking to myself, why would you only get 1,000 rows downloaded, even though you have?
I think
so
that's
the only
why.
thing I could think of, it was 30,000 data points, and the table was extremely wide. And if you had 30 columns, then you would limit the number of rows you
Yeah.
get as well. So I didn't really know if you guys had played with that at all.
Hey, Darren, do you
Add
know
some
how to get
comments
more than
again
10,000
in
rows
the
out of
chat
that?
window.
Oh, there you go. He's
Yeah,
correcting
if you
me.
use the XML endpoint, you could probably get around it.
DAX Studio, right?
Yeah.
Well, that yeah.
DAX
Studio
Studio
does
can
cover
extract
everything.
Yeah.
In fact,
Yeah.
that was where I've seen Power Query. You were talking about Power Query not being a standalone product. I've had one user that was having out of memory issues, and it was actually Excel running out of memory because he was trying to load, I think, like 6,000 CSVs using Power Query
Oh,
into a tabular model, so he could export it with DAX Studio as a single one. He was,
yeah.
I mean, this is what
Wow.
end users do. That
That's like
the
Rube
tool he
Goldberg.
had with Excel. He was
Yeah.
using Get and Transform.
Jesus.
It was just unfortunate. It was trying to materialize the whole.
But
6,000
back on this
CSV.
exporting thing, right? So let's say you've got a table with, I don't know, 100,000 rows in it. You can use the query profiler in desktop to copy the query, right? And
Yeah.
I should be able to cut and paste that query into DAX Studio using the new external tools toolbar and then export to a CSV in the correct tabular structure, right?
Yeah, you
Why not?
probably have to edit it because you would.
It
I
has
think
a top,
the
it has a
top
top end on the
end
top of it,
Yeah, okay, so remove the
wrapped
top
in
end.
it.
and then it should just
There's a
run.
blog. Yeah.
Don't say here's a blog, because then someone else is going to take this and make it right away. You just got to say the idea. You got to
Right.
turn this around quick now, Matt. It's going to have to happen.
Yeah, so I think that's
You
the
can do it
answer.
from
Some
desktop
other note
or
on the Azure
XML
Maps,
endpoint.
Hey,
perhaps?
Darren, can you latch into the that profiler tool somehow, or make some sort of way to edit out that top end piece for exporting? That'd be a killer feature. I tell you what, there's so many people. I mean, coming back, who made the point? Was it Mark? Why do you want to export it? Okay, you're
Yep.
100% right. I totally agree. I think but I mean, there's valid reasons for data validation, all sorts of testing purposes, and whatever. But Darren, I just think that's a great opportunity now that you're integrated. If somehow you could streamline that process of getting that basically we're talking about getting a matrix query from the profiler in desktop, get it over to DAX Studio, and there's plenty of demos out there. I've seen one by Phil Seamark where he shows you how to performance manage your tools and stuff like that. And then, so it's exactly the same process. And then to your point, Darren, you've got to remove that top end because for everyone else who perhaps doesn't realize what the visual does is it puts a top end 501. So it basically forces the query to return 501 rows. I think the one might be the total, although I could be wrong. Basically just send the query for the amount needed to visualize a usable number of rows in the table, right, or the matrix. And when you move the scroll bar up and down, I believe that 501 changes. You probably know more about it, Darren, than most, but that's my understanding.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, one simple trick is just to chuck a bunch of zeros in there, make it 5,000,001. And
yeah, okay.
So there's go ahead.
I was going to say, there's another. Sorry, you mentioned Phil Seamark. Phil Seamark is having an AMA for desktop and DAX tomorrow, and I just dropped the link in there as well, just in case you want to go follow that tomorrow. Sorry, go ahead, Darren.
Okay.
Yeah, I've actually been talking to Daniel Ottier about things like that. He's actually done a fair bit of work around sort of looking at things that could refactor DAX. So we might sort of join forces a bit on that, and he might be able to give me a bit of a leg up. But you really need a full DAX parser to be able to completely understand the statement. So you strip out the right brackets and the right arguments. But yeah,
well, that sounds like
possible.
SQL BI if you need a DAX parser, right? They've already got that on DAX Formatter. So so go and speak with Marco. And there's a Daniel, I think it's Daniel as well, or Danielle. Danielle's the developer, I think, that produces DAX Formatter. So they've already got a parser. In fact, you've already got
using the one
out to the parser, right?
I prototyped the parser a little while ago.
But didn't you punch out to DAX Formatter, right, from DAX Studio? You don't need a parser. You've already got one.
Oh no! With DAX Formatter, we throw just a string of text at it, and it comes back with the line breaks and things in it. Okay. So it doesn't give you a syntax tree. It does it all server side.
So, but
I do want to make
other.
Yeah, I think you actually might be doing the same thing that I was mentioning, like taking a look at some of the other releases. We're already talking about DAX. I would love to transition to the idea of the 49 friggin' DAX functions that came out this month. Like, I don't think I've ever seen that many in a single release of new functions being released. Granted, I don't use those types of functions very often, but I think it was really cool that they just dumped this entire new set of syntax sugar, into Power BI, in general. So I think that's a great new addition this month.
Yep. It was exactly the same point I wanted to make. So
perfect. Yeah.
How would you use those things? Because they're mainly statistical and financial modeling stuff, right? So, if you're using Excel, I get it, but when you're using tabular data, how do you see them being used?
I mean, like you said, they're primarily financial functions and stuff like that. So there's a very, I wouldn't say quite niche, but it's certainly very specific use cases for them. I've never used any of them myself, even in my days of Excel, but I know for the market of people that this is catering towards, the people that have used these in their day-to-day lives have said that this is extremely nice to be able to see this transition from Excel now into Power BI, especially for a lot of people who have done Excel modeling previously, in a lot of the reports on spreadsheets.
I would say in general terms for me, I'm seeing a lot more convergence between what people are doing in Power BI and Excel and trying to make models that support both of those. It definitely seems to be there's a lot more merging between and that's kind of one of the things that I preach to the clients is I really want you to focus on not just making a model in Excel or making a model for Power BI, but how do you build a model that serves both of those? And kind of that coined moniker is act like the business, think like IT, right? We want to move quickly and be nimble, but yet we want to build things that are sustainable and repeatable. So I think this will help out from an Excel side standpoint, right? If I'm building Excel models that need these things or consume them, I can consume them like I would normally in Excel, now I can use the data model to support those measures as well with these new functions. So that's where I see it potentially being used as a little bit more, and maybe helping out some of that Excel side of things and merge the tools closer together.
It also, it's a very specific scenario. Like I have a slide in one of my trainings where it actually has a count of like, the number of DAX functions that are shared between Excel and the Excel environment and traditional Excel functions in DAX, and that number's now just gone up by 49. So it makes that slide look a lot more impressive now too for the people like transitioning from one world to the other.
I get a fair amount of questions about how do I make a balance sheet in a Power BI.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a YouTube video on a P&L. A balance sheet wouldn't be too much different, I don't think.
It's the ordering of things. Everything has to be in like the right order, and that's when it gets difficult. You have to like figure out how to make everything ordered right.
And don't you need subtotals that only abstract certain items?
Yep. Someone should make a custom visual for that.
So I learned how to do this from a guy by the name of Derek Rickard. He showed me this about 5 years ago. I met him at a PAS Summit conference, or it wasn't PAS Summit, it was Bacon. You remember the old BA conference, PAS BA conference? And Derek shared with me the solution to this. I actually did a live YouTube video about 6 or 8 weeks ago. It's on my blog. So if you just search xbi.com.au, go to my blog. And I take you through the process basically. And so all of those issues, getting the sort orders, getting the subtotals to work, and it's pretty standard stuff that we all use every day with connected tables and various other detection processes. But I didn't invent it. I just, we all learn from someone, right? So I learned from Derek. He was a really smart guy, and I just sort of put my own spin on it. So,
is it in your recent blog list, Matt? I'll drop it in the chat window.
It's on the front page. I can do it as well. But so it's definitely in the first 6 ago, if I had to guess. So it's called Build a P&L in Power BI.
Oh, got it right here. Yep, I got it. So I'll do two things. I'll link direct. So because I'm doing that stream through YouTube, I can drop in a full link. So I'll drop the full link in there for you. Yeah. And then I'll also link to your blog as well.
Yeah, no worries. So there you go. What else? What about? I'll tell you one thing that I noticed that I haven't had a chance to look in, but I have a note to dig into is the update from the Mac software multi-axis chart. There were lots of things in there that I thought looked really interesting, like being able to change the names on the data points on your column charts and stuff like that. I reckon that's a pretty useful feature. I don't actually remember, as I said, I've got a note to go back and look in more detail. But it seems to me that piece of software is going to have a lot of enhancements over a standard column chart or line chart. Has anyone else had a look at it?
I have not played with that one. I typically don't play with custom visuals as much as I try to stay away from as much as possible. I try and stick with all the standard stuff as much as I can.
Yeah, me too. I think you're referring to the XViz multi-axis.
Oh, the XViz one. Sorry, the XViz one. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. No,
yeah, Mike, I'm with you. Like best practice of make native visuals work until they can't, and then fall back to a custom visual.
Yeah.
It is an interesting topic to discuss. Maybe the current way that the producers of custom visuals are limited in their distribution, and that they feel like it's a time. It's due time that there are some changes for them. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, I do know it's been very hard for people to monetize on custom visuals, and it's been difficult to kind of track what you produce and how you produce it, and how to get kind of like people to buy into that visual. I think distribution at the enterprise level has also been quite challenging. Once you buy a visual, or if you get a visual, how do you distribute it to your organization and say that our company has a license for this, and how's that tracked?
There's been a recent change, if I'm correct, on the marketplace. You can set up like a organizational marketplace. I believe from Power BI Desktop, you now click the marketplace for visuals. There's a tab at the top to search the entire marketplace or your organization. So what you can do.
I thought that's been there for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's reading from the organizational visuals that are configured in the tenant. So
Yeah.
your tenant admin can add the custom visuals there if you want to.
But you can, but
Yes,
there's still
there are
licensing. There's still a licensing challenge, right? So even if you did add those,
Yeah.
right? So there's like the whole, if I bought a visual, you can add it there, and some visuals actually require like a license key in the visual. So if you do that and you have to like, drop
Yeah.
the key into the visual itself, then you can share the visual. Everyone can click it, but then you still have this issue of like, well, how does it work? It won't go because I don't have the license key to actually add it in there. So I think there's like a licensing portion that kind of makes it a bit more challenging, and I think maybe it's kept a bit of developers away at this point, or kind of at bay for now.
I've heard the same.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
also
either-
remember for them to update their visuals, it takes a bit of a long time for the update to reach the end users. And
Yeah.
when there's like a bug that they quickly fix, it takes too long to reach the end users. So they have a sort of a direct connection to the users that have bought their visuals, and then they just distribute it directly. Yeah, that's taking too much time for them. So that should be optimized a bit more. But I think it's picked up by Microsoft, and that they're trying to fix it as soon as possible.
We've had some experience with that, right? With yours was template apps rather than custom visuals, but there was a similar issue there, I think, with one of your Google template app that you produced, right? Google Analytics.
Oh, for mine. Yeah, there's, well, that's still, I would say, like some of its biggest issues with that is the amount of infancy that it's still in, as far as like what's allowed and isn't, and the amount of legal tape sometimes that has to be jumped through and what you're allowed to include, what you can connect to, and all these. I've gone through like every pain point that's possible with getting those published. It's great for marketing, but it's a very painful growth area as far as like what you can and can't do, and there's not always a correct answer for like a clear answer on what you're allowed to versus not.
Yeah.
If we go back to the visualization thing, how excited are you about the gradient legend?
I think gradient. So I'm
enthused.
When I was doing my
Good.
master's in data science, I was actually trying to do a gradient legend, and to Reed's point, I had to go get a gradient, build it in a separate program, screenshot it, and then drop it in as an image, just so I could.
And then don't slice and dice.
And you can't, don't slice and dice. And it was a very simplistic thing, but it's definitely, I think, a very much needed add. I think that's a really if you're gonna show bars with very good colors, like you got to have a legend that goes along with that too. I think that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, and it works automatic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact that it has the min and max up there, which are basically like kind of almost totals for your chart in the corner, is actually pretty useful. That would require 3 visuals or 3 objects on your report page to build that previously.
Plus the regular visual. So you got to have previously you had to build the chart, you had to put the gradient image in, and you had to build 2 measures that did the min and the max of the gradient for you. So I built like a R custom visual that has a gradient like in a grid form. It's almost like a heat map type thing. Well, the heat map needed like a gradient on it because the colors were changing from like a cold to a red. And then I had to have 3 more objects on the page. So in my world, it just simplified a ton of things to have gradients on stuff from a visualization standpoint. It definitely needed to be there.
I think it does too, but I'm just not convinced that it's deployed the best possible way, because I mean, you look at this. I'm just looking at the blog post now. You look at that little baby gradient. To me, I'm just wondering whether it would be more useful to do a quartile gradient legend. So instead of doing a continuous gradient,
chunks,
show the lower quartile, the upper quartile, and the second and the third, so that or maybe take the gradients from the chart and take the top number, the bottom number, and then 2 intermediate ones, which is basically quartiles, I guess. Then, but to have it as defined 4 different colors, because I just think that continuous gradient on an icon, the size it is, frankly, the only information I'm getting from it is what's the biggest number, what's the smallest number, and dark is biggest and light is smallest. I can't extract any other information from that icon.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to be critical. That's my experience. Yeah. So maybe that would be an enhancement, sort of lock it up into 4 or 6 data points.
Is that as big as it'll get? Do you have the ability to scale it larger than what they have there? I'm trying to build one right now.
Yeah, you can increase it. If you increase the font size, it will make the bar bigger too. But the only way to get the bar bigger is to increase the font size. The one thing that I personally would love is like a regular legend with a lot of actual categories can fit the entire size of the top, bottom, left, or right. Like there's enough room for that. But I find it annoying that I have to give up all that white space for this little gradient in the corner. And like in Excel, like on a chart where typically if you have growth over time, you usually have a ton of white space in the upper left-hand corner of your chart, because that's usually where the smallest bars are, and it's almost always empty. I would love an option to say where to place your legend, upper left-hand corner of the actual chart, so it doesn't like scoot the chart down.
So ideas.powerbi.com lead. Yeah,
right?
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on,
as soon as I saw the gradient legend, like, man, I want an overlay of this, and putting that to the right of the axis, but on the actual chart area.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
So someone asks, Iris asks, is there any best practice for a Python/R within Power BI? I think I'm only aware that Dave, you've probably spent a little bit of time in Python R somewhat. Have you done some of that, or has anybody else played with Python and R?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is be very careful, because when you are going to publish your report, the refresh usually is a pain. I think if you have a self-hosted enterprise gateway, you can do it. If I'm correct, but the Microsoft refresh is not possible.
So I think I want to caveat this too. There's a couple places where you can use R and Python, right? You can use R and Python at the visual level by making a custom visual with that technology. Yep. And then you can also use that in the Power Query side. I think, Dave, you're referring to more of like the Power Query side, like, hey, I'm going to go use R and Python on the back end to do some kind of mathematics on top of a data set, and then spit out a data frame that I'll consume in the report. Is that kind of correct?
Yeah. That's
so I've done both sides, and I think I would echo your same sentiment. One thing I would recommend right off the get-go is there's the CRAN, the CRAN distribution of R, and then there's the MRAN, Microsoft's version of it. So mran.microsoft.com. Some people just pick up the CRAN packages and use them. But in some cases, the Microsoft is a little bit lagging behind from what the CRAN packages are doing. So I would recommend, if you're going to do it, start with the MRAN installation of R on your machine, first and foremost. That's where you would begin. Then from a visualization standpoint for R and Python, if you're making visuals, there's a really good GitHub package that's out there for building Plotly. So I would recommend, if you're going to do like kind of elaborate visualization stuff in I think it's in R, I would recommend using the Plotly piece. It seems to simplify a lot of things. You can zoom in, zoom out, grab a width, grab a height. You can grab a window in the visual as well. There's a lot of really neat flexibility there. So I would recommend looking at that if you're going to do that from the visualization side. And then what I would say from the R and Python inside the editor, do as much as you can data manipulation outside of R and Python. So like, a lot of what you find as you go through a pipeline, there's a lot of ETL processing, data, you're just cleaning up columns, getting rid of bad values, getting rid of dupes, all that kind of stuff. Power Query is really served very well to do a lot of that stuff. So if you're just preparing data, I would recommend prepare your data inside the Power Query engine and only bring in a cleaned data frame for when you want to do the machine learning, the R, the statistics analysis. You do that inside the Python and R, and don't do the data manipulation there if you can help it. I know there's certain functions that are just way more efficient in Python, but to Dave's point, it will run slower, and you kind of want to do all your prep work, get the data prepared, do your machine learning on it, and then get it back out as quickly as possible, and then prepare your data the rest of the way for the visualization stuff. So that's kind of how I feel like it works best for me. Other people may have other opinions too.
And I think, Mike, too, part of your statement is the I've only dabbled in Python and R, but unlike a lot of the other functions, certainly against foldable sources, Power Query transformations can be folded back to the server, whereas as soon as you do anything with Python or R, that breaks folding, correct?
Yeah, you're not going to be able to that stuff backwards. Yep.
Yeah, so like that will kill performance, especially if you like immediately look for clustering with R and then do a bunch of transformations on top of that, you're going to have a very slow query.
And I'll point out Alex Powers. I don't know if everyone follows them. Also, Alex does a great job of going. He's been doing like a 30-day Power Query challenge where he's trying to find a bunch of things that fold or doesn't fold. One thing that was new news to me in this whole situation was I didn't know that if you right-click, well, I knew this. If you right-click on the Power Query steps and it says C query below or C under native query or something like that, it shows
View native query.
view native query. That's what it is. View native query.
Yep.
It shows you some SQL code that it tries to generate for you if you go back to like a SQL server or you try and go back to the source system. But that doesn't always light up. So I'm doing stuff right now where I have a Spark cluster that's using SQL, and so I am actually folding queries back from my Power BI into Spark using the SQL connector, ODBC or something like that connector, and it is still folding even though even though the little box is grayed out. So there's a lot of cases where it still does query fold, even though the box is grayed out. And the only way you can actually know that is if you're actually watching the traces back or watching your SQL server or whatever engine
SQL
you're looking at.
yeah.
You're watching the queries run across it. So just be aware. I'm going to see if I'm trying to dig up the article on it. He's done a lot of documentation around this because it's not really well documented anywhere.
It's good to point out that's an exception, not the rule. Like it's still a pretty reliable.
I agree.
Indicator of that, but there's some random things that you can do with, and I think it depends. It especially depends on the type of connection, because I think it's pretty reliable against straight SQL sources. But yeah, it's not de facto. And I was same thing, Mike. Before reading that, I thought it was 100% reliable. It's like 98% reliable.
Yeah, or less. I don't even know. I think there's a lot of them that are not out there.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I think if it's lit up, it's definitely folding. If it's not, maybe
True.
not.
Yeah, it's like, if it's lit up, for sure it is folding. If it's not lit up, maybe it's not doing it. Or maybe it is. You don't know.
Yep, maybe it is.
Dave, we don't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry, yeah, I muted myself earlier. Side note on this, I discovered if you have two queries and then you merge join those, if the independent queries are foldable up to the state where it's merged, even the join is folded and sent to the source, which is great. And I up until that moment I thought no, that before that it breaks, but I saw the evidence and it all got sent to the source.
So you're saying like two things like
Oh goodness.
Someone's
That
out there
just
with crazy.
I think Mike just died.
Did I just die?
It's really staticky, buddy.
Hey Darren, check your mic again. You might have had another issue with your mic.
Oh.
Dave, you might.
Sounds like I'm in a wind tunnel.
Hang on.
Everybody unmute.
The battery on your headset.
All right, I think it's Darren's mic. Darren, I think your mic has gone a little bit weird. I was on a web call with Darren earlier, and the microphone just decided to be done. It was just over. All right, just gonna fix his mic. Sorry, where were we? I totally lost track of mind of that.
It was 50 days of query folding, and how can we continually keep things folding?
Gotcha. So I wanted to ask a question. So Dave, you were saying 2 SQL queries, right? They're able to fold all the way up until the merge step, and then you did the merge step, and it actually grabbed that same merge step, and so it basically did the merge and the subqueries all together, and pushed all that down to the server.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Exactly.
So it has to be the same machine, I would assume, right? Same machine, same database.
Hey Adam, thanks for joining, and have a good night. He's popping off.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it.
So we're at an hour. So what's the plan?
I just want to say one final thing about that. I want to say one final thing about that merge thing. It's actually the question that I posted to our Slack chat earlier. But the you can have 2 queries that are folding. You can merge them. You can also do that with a left join by default. The thing that's super tricky that I think for a lot of people is if you change that merge to an inner join, that step won't fold until you expand out or aggregate something from the join. The actual merge step is unfoldable, and then it starts folding again after you do some action as part of the inner join. So you either have to aggregate or you have to expand, but you have to bring in data from that other table to have folding go start up again after the inner join. And that it threw me for a loop. I had to do some fancy workarounds to keep the folding happening, not realizing that it was a false break from
but when you think about it, I understand the highlight there, Reed, and I wasn't aware of that. Or I do remember you chatting about it. But let's think about it. If you write a SQL query and you say, select star from sales, left out a join on products, join on the key, and then you don't extract a column from the products
Sure.
table, I mean, what happens? I'm guessing nothing. Right?
But in Power Query, if I don't actually expand any data, the rows are already reduced. The merge will actually, and it's an inner join.
Oh, really?
The rows.
But
So
I
I'm
wonder
normally
whether that's
done-
one of your false positives then.
Well, it still actually goes from like say 1,000 to 800. So like I often will do an inner join to filter my data if there's I want to do it
Yeah.
all accept or something. And I before I ever even knew about query folding, I was just like, well, no, yeah, I just do the merge step. Why would I ever expand the data? Because it's already filtered, so I have no need. I just get
Particularly
rid
for
of
an
the
inner
column.
join, which was your point. Right?
Exactly, yeah. And then, so now I have to now actually bring in the data and then delete
But
the
have
data.
you tested it with the profiler to know that it's not one of those 2% of the false
have.
negatives?
Yeah, like and you can also watch in the corner where it goes like 100, 200. It takes like 15 minutes sometimes for it
Right,
to download
okay.
all the data on the merge step, and then the expand is just instantaneous.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's a weird little scenario, but it totally works. You just have to make sure to keep kicking the can down, and expand or aggregate are required.
I want to be mindful of your guys' time here as well. Any
Yeah, I got to drop off.
Matt's got to go be billable. He's got to go make
Yeah,
money.
that's exactly right.
I think we all got to do that. Right?
Yeah, we all got to go make money at some point. Hey guys, I want to say thank you very much. I apologize for the 18 minutes of like yuckiness in the beginning. Michael's going to try and work on the technology piece. We're going to try and get that a little bit cleaner here. We'll keep trying to do these things. For those of you who joined online, thank you very much. We appreciate you participating and asking some questions. There's been some great chat going on in the chat window. Adam, thank you very much for participating and helping field a lot of those questions as well. Gentlemen, we'll see you next month, hopefully. I think this will be a good thing. I'll see if I can grab some more MVPs into this, and we'll start trying to keep growing this and make it a little bit of a fun hangout, chit chat, talk about features and stuff if you're up for it.
Yeah.
Sounds
Yep,
great.
Sure. Thanks for having us.
Thanks all.
Yep.
See you
Guys, thanks very much. Cheers.
Sleep
Thank-
well, Europe.
Thank you.
Thank you
See you
very
guys.
much. Have a great work day
Cheers.
and have a good night for those of you who are going to bed now. I appreciate it. Take care,
Like
guys.
that.
All right, see you later. All right, bye.
Bye. All right.